This is the Financial Beat, helping you hit all the right notes in your financial plan. So sit back as we strike up the band. The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler starts now.
Welcome to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, Vice President and Chief Investment Officer at McGarry Financial. Wherever you are today in Southern California, thank you so much for being here. I'm Ron Stutz. We're going to talk about getting you to and through retirement. Logan, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing good. Not bad for a radio day, and looking forward to a good show. Hopefully you're doing well as well, Ron.
Yeah, my favorite day of the week when we get a chance to talk about things, and we have some very important topics of discussion today. Let me put your very important phone number out there for folks who are just joining us, 888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. You call that number, and you can arrange to have a discovery meeting with Logan Sadler. We'll tell you all about a discovery meeting, what that entails during the show today, but just suffice it to say it's kind of a getting to know you session, and it's not going to cost you anything. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call. Before we get really serious here today, you remember the song, Gotta Keep Them Separated?
Yeah,
you know what
I do.
Who
doesn't, right?
It's by The Offspring. Gotta keep them separated. There are certain things in your financial life that you should keep separated. Remember 3 years ago, we were first learning about social distancing, and COVID came along, and we were talking about that. But let's call it social distancing for your money in today's conversation. And nice. I want you, if you would, to explain why these various items should practice social distancing and not hang out together. All right. So what about your emergency fund and the stock market? Why should you keep those two things separated?
Yeah, that's a good one there. That one I think's if you've been listening to the show for a while, we've been kind of driving that home here for a long time, and I think the main reason on this, Ron, is I actually got asked this by a family member the other day, and it was funny because they're like, hey, look, I got $50,000 in my savings, and that's there to kind of get me through these hard times, right? If I get laid off or if something big comes up like a roof leak or car problems or whatever, and they were like, well, I was thinking about taking, 50% of that or 75% of that and just putting it in some stocks, or some type of investment that might make me a little bit more money than sitting in the savings. And the reason why you don't want to do that majority of the time is because a lot of the times you shouldn't be investing money, especially into the stock market, that you're going to need on a short-term basis, right? I tell almost every client that when we're looking at stocks, they're, again, not knocking on them. They're a great investment to put places, mutual funds, ETFs, individual stocks, all can be great in a portfolio and in a retirement plan. But you definitely don't want to be putting money in there you're going to need, in 6 months or in 3 months. When you're investing in the stock market, you want to make sure it's there for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, maybe even 5 to 10 years plus in most cases, depending on the strategies, before you put it into the stock market, right? Mm-hmm. The reason being, Ron, I always ask people, let's say you got $50,000 in savings and you lose some money and it goes down to, let's say, $40,000 or $35,000. How big of an impact would that make on your situation? Probably huge, right? Because that's your emergency fund to get you by through things. So, and I always tell the biggest thing that tends to correlate is when the markets are very turbulent and they're very volatile, is typically when somebody is going through a hard time, like a layoff, right? Or less hours at work. So it's not always, are you going through it not only in the market account you have, but also in your personal life. So it's not normally a good time to pull from those investments, especially when they're down. So that's why when you have an emergency fund, you should keep it separate. It should be just in liquid cash where if something comes up, you can grab it in a very, very short manner time frame and not have to worry about it being up or down or any type of penalties or anything like that.
Okay, we're talking about keeping things separate in your financial life with Logan Sadler, McGarry Financial. And what about your life insurance and your investments? Why should those two things be kept separate?
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I tend to decide on kind of in the middle on this one here, Ron, where I am one of those advisors where what they're talking about here, for those of you guys that aren't aware, they're talking about universal life insurance, whole life insurance, either fixed or variable. And what that means is it's basically a way you could buy life insurance and have an investment inside of it. Now, there is a lot of people out there that push a lot of these types of products, into, plans where it doesn't necessarily make sense, right? Where someone's putting $50 or $100 a month into these, and a lot of the times it's going towards the cost of life insurance, and you're really not investing much of the rest of that. That's why a lot of people out there, like, Dave Ramsey and some of these other famous people on the radio or on TV, they talk about you need to have term life insurance, meaning you buy term life insurance for, a 10, 20, or a 30-year time frame, and then you invest the rest of the money into an IRA, 401k, or Roth, or something like that. Mm-hmm. Now, that's good advice for most, but I will say I do like the idea of keeping it separate majority of the time. Okay, there's a good reason to keep those things separate. Most of the time, a universal life insurance or whole life policy isn't always the right fit for people. Now, with that being said, everybody is different and unique, and I have seen a lot of the times, Ron, where those universal life insurance policies can be a great way to put lump sums of money into to create tax-free income down the road and provide that death benefit, right? So you got to kind of find that balance there, but I think that's one of those things where you want to make sure you're meeting with a comprehensive advisor that's able to kind of tell you through what the pros and the cons are of keeping those commingled, because there can be some advantages to it, but there can also be some disadvantages. So you want to make sure on that one, you're really doing your due diligence to understand, is this the right thing for me? And again, hopefully you're not just meeting with someone that's pushing, just pushing life insurance, but meeting with an advisor that could really, really educate you on the pros and cons of that, and if it's even right for your situation.
Okay, Logan, there are high turnover investment strategies and non-retirement assets. Got to keep them separated. Why?
Yeah, so like non-retirement accounts, I'm assuming on this one we're talking about, like a cash brokerage account. Let's say you opened it up and you have, cash in there. And now those are taxed at capital gains rates. For those of you who don't know, every time there's a buy or a sell, those can be taxable. You don't want high turnover investments typically in those strategies, because if you have a very active portfolio or something that turns over a lot of different investments, you're going to be creating a lot of different taxable events in those sells and buys, right? So I always tell people, when you look at an average client comes into our office, they got maybe $500,000 in an IRA, maybe $100,000 in a brokerage account, and then some savings, right? Or more or less than all that. But just an example, some types of accounts are okay to have active management, like an IRA or a Roth IRA, because they're all basically deferred. So when their buys and sells are going on, you're not getting hit with any extra tax implications, right? On the cash side, like the individual brokerage side, you don't want something buying and selling all the time like a lot of these day traders tend to do, because you're actually taking away a lot of your investment return in most cases due to taxes, right? A lot of the times you want to do more efficient strategies like holding long-term in those accounts to utilize things like long-term capital gains that are taxed at a more efficient rate. So definitely want to make sure you're kind of understanding how to keep those separate and find out which accounts are the best to hold those more active strategies that might have more turnover.
You're listening to The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler. I'm going to tell you in just a moment how you can get in touch with Logan and get a conversation going that is cost-free, obligation-free. We're talking about things that you need to keep separate. And I think this last one I wanted to mention here is the most obvious and the most common sense one that we talk about a lot on this show. You shouldn't make important financial decisions when you're in any kind of an emotional state. How about your emotions and your investment decisions? Logan, reiterate, if you would, why it's so important to keep those two things apart.
Yeah, like you said, Ron, it is funny, right? Because one of the first things you learn about investing, anybody that ever kind of got into it, is they hear, okay, leave your money for the long term. Y'all probably be okay long term. Don't get super panicked if the market goes up and down. That's kind of what the market does, right? We're all kind of aware of all these stories from families or friends or even advisors are telling us this information. But it's like clockwork, right? When the market goes down, it naturally causes emotional panic. Right? For not everybody. There's a lot of investors out there that are very disciplined and can, be just fine during these times. But there is a lot of people out there that still, when it's volatile, right? I always tell people, when you see money go down, it's never fun, right? Even though you knew it could happen. Just like at the casino, you put $100 in, you lose $50. You knew you were there to have a good time, but now it doesn't feel like a good time, right? And so that's a lot like investing, right? We, just like that, like at the casino, we're using our emotions to say if we should do this or do that. And that's the exact opposite of how you should be investing for your retirement. A lot of the times you want to find an investment approach that's appropriate for you with risk tolerance, and making sure you truly understand what your risk tolerance is and what the characteristics of your investments will be like during volatile times. Because It's not if a volatile time ever happens, right? It's when, because they always happen. It just could be 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. So you want to make sure you're emotionally aware of what can happen. And I think that's something where the education piece on our side, Ron, is so important. We spend a lot of time with clients hammering in risk, what the pros and cons are of it. And that's not saying that everybody needs to be terrified of risk. It's just saying everybody needs to be aware, right? And I think that's something we do a good job with our clients and prospects that come into our firm to really educate them on what risk is, because unfortunately, a lot of people out there still make decisions based off their retirement, based off emotions. And again, it can be a very inefficient way to invest, especially when you're looking at a 10, 20, or 30-year retirement. You have to make sure you kind of are able to keep your emotions in line with what your risk tolerance is to create that efficient retirement plan. So, that's what we do. Again, we're a full service financial advisory firm out here, and we meet people basically all over, Ron, right? Not just California, but all over the place. And we specialize in helping people plan and prepare for retirement to help get you to and through. And we're, again, one of those firms that takes a real deep dive into what it is you're trying to accomplish. And we have access to all these different tools and strategies to help get you to where you want to go. But it all starts with that discovery meeting, just to see if we're a good fit and to take that next step.
Okay, here's a number you can get in touch, 888-823-7526. But the easy way to remember that is by using the word plan, 888-823-plan. That number is for Regari Financial, with convenient offices in Hemet and also Redlands. And if you'd like to have a conversation with Logan Sadler, the same guy you hear on this radio show every week and on the podcast and in the YouTube videos, you want a conversation with Logan, all you got to do is call that number right now. Leave a message with your name and phone number. You'll get a call back and set up a convenient time to have that discovery meeting. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make it happen. Again, there is no cost whatsoever and no obligation. I'm Ron Stutz along with Logan Sadler. You're listening to the Financial Beat, a show that's all about getting you to and through retirement. We'll have more coming up in just a moment.
We all know Congress has approved trillions of dollars in spending the past year. It's all on top of the tens of trillions of dollars of debt our nation already owes. Yet we're living with some of the lowest tax rates in history. Now, how long do you think that's going to last? Learn how you can prepare for future tax implications by watching Logan Sadler of Regari Financial's exclusive webinar, How Tax Planning Changes Through the 4 Stages of Retirement. Just text the word advice to the number 21,000, and we'll text you back a link to the webinar right away. Text advice to 21,000 and make sure you don't have to pay a cent more in taxes than you have to. To access the free webinar right now, text advice to 21,000.
Does it feel like you and your financial advisor aren't on the same page?
Not quite my tempo. Were you rushing or were you dragging?
Logan and the team at Regari Financial can stay in tune and on rhythm with you. Keep listening to the Financial Beat.
Welcome back to more of the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, Vice President, Chief Investment Officer at Regari Financial, and Hemet and Redlands, wherever you happen to be in Southern California. We appreciate your taking the time to listen to the show today. Logan Sadler at Regari Financial works with 3 different generations of some folks, the client families, and many of those clients have been with the firm for more than a quarter of a century. And at Logan Sadler's office at Regari Financial, you will find a comprehensive approach to retirement, and it's a collection of all kinds of assets for you in your financial life. And they have great connections and partnerships with CPAs, attorneys, real estate agents, mortgage lenders, and everybody to get you to and through retirement. One more time, the number is 888-823-PLAN. If you'd like to have a discussion about your situation, kind of an open-ended conversation, you get to know him, he gets to know you. Won't cost you anything at all. 888-823-PLAN. TV shows and movies always have main characters, the star of the show or the star of the movie or whatever, that get the most attention. But sometimes secondary characters can have a really significant effect on the plot. Maybe they only appear briefly in a movie but do something really important. Or maybe it's somebody who's usually in the background, but then there's one particular episode of a TV show that revolves around them. So I thought today we could talk about the main characters and secondary characters of your financial life. what things tend to get the most attention all the time, and what things only seem to be important occasionally. Now, for each of these items, you tell us, Logan, if the average person makes it a main character or a secondary character. Which main characters should get less attention? Which secondary characters should get more attention? All right? So
I'm ready.
You watch a lot of movies and TV shows, I guess.
What's funny, when you were saying that, I was kind of thinking of like, who is my favorite secondary characters out there in some of the more popular TV shows, and it was not hard to find.
Oh yeah, well, you want to share those with us, or is that something we should talk about off here?
I was just thinking about the more popular shows the last few years. You got like Ozarks, like that's a big one that's been out. I was thinking about Ruth, right? She's not the main character, but she's an important one that a lot of people liked. And you got Yellowstone. You got Rip, who's a big one. I don't think he's necessarily supposed to be the main character, but a lot of people like him. Just some of those ones, like you said, they're a huge impact on the storyline.
I watched all of Ozark. Have not watched Yellowstone at all. So
Oh, it's not a bad one. It's fun.
That's something I need to check into, I guess. All right, main characters and secondary characters. How about your 401k at your current job? What should that be?
It should be a main character, right? That should be something where we're really keeping an eye on it. But I would say a lot of people tend to have that as a second. A lot of people do line that up with a main character. I'm sorry. Yeah. A lot of people understand that, okay, this might be, with all the information out there, a lot of people understand that, hey, this might be one of the bigger tools to get for me to use as an asset in retirement, right? So I think that one typically does take that main character status. Again, some people don't look at it or utilize it as much as they should, but still, I think a lot of people are now aware, that they might not have as big of a pension coming or any pension at all, and they're going to have just that and Social Security. So I think it is up there with the main character, and I think it should be a little bit more talked about and looked at, but I would still say most people are pretty aware of that.
There's credits that run at the end of a movie with all the people who appeared in the movie. This next one here might appear way down the list for a lot of folks. 401ks from previous jobs.
You're 100% right. That one I would say for most people out there, Ron, is not even secondary, right? It's like third or fourth, and a very, very small supporting role for a lot of people. But it should be the main, right? It should be up there with the main character because it's one of those that it's as important as your current one. And a lot of people, I've met with several people throughout the last few years where they call into the radio show or come to one of our webinars or whatever, what have you, and they'll be like, hey, you know what? I got a couple accounts here and there, and you start adding it up. They got $40,000 in this old IRA, $100,000 in this old one, and then they have $50,000 in their wife's old one who doesn't work anymore, right? It's like, well, they haven't even looked at those since they left that job 5 or 10 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. So in my opinion, it's as important as any investment out there because, again, it's money that you have put away that you need to really maximize for retirement. So I would say a lot of you out there listening to the show right now that have some old 401ks or IRAs, you want to make sure you're kind of, number one, consolidating those and also looking at could they be better used and better situated than they now, compared to what they were, 5 or 10 years ago when you set those up.
Unfortunately, with so many people changing jobs these days, lots of times those old 401ks at previous jobs are just forgotten about altogether.
100%, Ron. You're totally right. I think that's probably one of the more common things we get. And even some of our older clients, man, they've been with us for 5 or 10 years already, and they're like, you know what? I totally forgot to mention I had this other one over here with $50,000 in it, right? And they'll pull it in, and it's, yep, that's right. You opened it in 1994, and and so yeah, it's definitely very common. But one of those things we really try to get the message out there. It's super important to take a look at those and consolidate those, and again, making sure that they're working in your best interest. And investments change all the time and things like that, so you want to make sure it's definitely put in the best situation it can be to maximize it for you.
How about life insurance policies? Should that be a main character or a secondary character?
It should be a main character, but the honest truth is a lot of times, again, we're very comprehensive in our discovery meeting, Ron. That's one of our questions, right? We go through what assets do you have, what your risk tolerance is, what's your family life like, do you have kids, things like that. And also we ask, do you have any long-term care or life insurance policies? And it's so interesting because a lot of times we'll get, I'm pretty sure, right? I'm pretty sure I have one. And so, or they say, yes, I do, but I don't know for how much or who holds it or what type it is. Yeah. And I think it's something that those are one of the biggest ways to, again, really kind of mitigate through a very difficult time if something happens to the breadwinner or anybody in the family, so to speak, to where you could replace that with life insurance, right? If something happens, you get a lump sum of cash to help get you through that hard time and financial stress. And we want to make sure we know exactly what it is, right? Is it running out? Is it a term policy that expires in 2 years, right? Or is it a whole life policy that has some cash value in it? We kind of need to know. So that's one of the things at our discovery meeting, a part of our process, where we kind of help pull all that up out of the dirt, I call it, and try to help get everything out onto the table and look at what we have. But I would say more often than not, Ron, that takes a backseat. A lot of people aren't necessarily as up to date on their life insurance as they might have thought, or as well as they should be.
You're listening to the Financial Beat with the one and only Logan Sadler. If you'd like to get in touch with Logan and the folks at Regary Financial, 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make it happen. We're talking about main characters and secondary characters here as they would appear in TV shows and movies and that sort of thing, and we're relating it to your financial life. How about bank accounts? If someone has a bank account, should that be a main character or a secondary character?
I'd say, again, a main character, right? I mean, it's something where we want to know how much we have in the bank, and we want to know how much we got there. But I would say most people are pretty in tune with their bank account. They might not have as much in there as they want, or might not be great savers, but they know what they got in there, type of thing, right? But I have had some clients, especially lately, some of them will have. It's very common nowadays for people to have multiple bank accounts. Mm-hmm. And so, I talked to a client the other day. He had about $150,000 or so in cash, but it was between like 6 bank accounts. He had like a Wells Fargo, a credit union, a Discover, so when you added it all up, it was like, holy cow, you got quite a few bank accounts. Most of the time in today's world, you don't really need that many, right? A lot of people like having maybe a credit union that's local, and they like having maybe a big bank like a Chase or a B of A or Wells Fargo, one of the big ones, and that's kind of about all you need nowadays. So it's, it's something where I definitely am a big fan of consolidation. I think that keeps things very simple and clean for most people, but most people are pretty in tune with their bank accounts, I'd say.
We talk a lot on the show about Roth IRAs and all the advantages of converting to a Roth and in all of that discussion. And how about a Roth IRA? Should that be a main character or a secondary character? Should folks pay more attention to it or less? What do you think?
100% they should pay more, right? There's a huge wave of people right now, I would say, though, that are starting to see the benefit of, man, you know what? I have a Roth IRA and I'm getting closer to retirement, and that thing is going to be very valuable. I should put more in there, right? Or I should look at Roth conversions. Yeah. I see it more and more often where there's more people talking about it, but still in the grand scheme of things, I would say, I'm making this up, okay? But I'm just kind of looking back over the last few months of meeting with people, and I would say, let's say I met with 10 people in a week, right? Okay. I would say maybe only 3 of them had a Roth IRA, right? It's not super, super common. Again, some weeks I have more than others, but it's still something where I think a lot of the messaging is starting to kind of get out there now about how important tax planning is when it comes to retirement, because most of the people out there, their money is typically tied up in a 401k or IRA. And again, not that that's the worst thing in the world, but it does not give you a whole lot of flexibility with tax-free money in retirement, because we have a huge chunk of our retirement in a 401k. It means it's all going to be taxable at whatever income rates we're stuck with, right? We don't get to pick those, unfortunately. So that's something where, I think the Roth IRA is one of those things that we try to get the message out a lot and see, again, does it make sense for us to contribute to one? Roth conversions, how does this impact things? And I think a lot of people have misunderstood, Ron, about how important the Roth IRA is in many different ways, right? Yeah. A lot of people think, well, maybe it's tax-free money for me. That's great, but, well, I don't know if I should do a conversion or contribute to one because I need the tax break now. What a lot of people forget is, yes, it's tax-free to you, right? If something happens to you, it also goes tax-free to the beneficiaries, right? Which is another huge thing. So when you have a Roth IRA, it's really hard to calculate how much tax savings that might have had you over 1 or 2 or 3 generations, right? So it's really very impactful, and it's something we're big fans of.
Well, next, and another very important one on our list of characters, a list of all main characters, it seems today we're talking about. Need to put a lot of thought into all of these things. Social Security. Boy, that's a very important piece of the puzzle, isn't it?
I always explain, and yes, you're right, Ron, but I always explain this one as it's funny because it's one of the biggest investments that most people don't even know they're making, right? Mm-hmm. When a lot of us get our first job, I was thinking back, my first like payroll job I ever had, I washed dishes, right, at a diner. Yeah. And I totally remember, right? You don't even think about it, right? You get your taxes taken out, you make whatever you made, right? You made $500, you got 300 of it, right? And you were like, okay, that's just how it is. And you don't realize that you start paying into Social Security at a very, very young age.
Yep.
And so it's one of those things where a lot of people, when they get ready to retire, they go, yeah, well, is it even going to be around, or is it going to run out of money, or is it really even going to help me that much in retirement? And you start looking, a lot of the clients we're working with, a lot of their Social Securities can be, $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month. I've seen some now going up to about $4,000 a month when they're later in retirement. So it's something where it's a huge chunk of your retirement savings. And it's, again, one of those things you didn't even really, you knew you were doing it, I guess, but you didn't even really know when you started or how important of a start it was. So you really want to make sure when it comes time to elect Social Security that you know how to elect it for your situation and really maximize it to leverage that to get the most amount of money out of that thing as you possibly can. So yeah, I would say all of these, Ron, seem to be kind of main characters, or should be main characters in my opinion. And it's something where, one of the things we do, again, part of our process, when you call in for that discovery meeting, a lot of people always ask, well, what should I expect at the discovery meeting? We kind of go through basically these 5 or 6 questions we talked about here, as well as many more, and just kind of getting to understand where you're at, what your situation looks like, and again, trying to understand what your bottom line goal is, right? When do you want to retire? How much longer do you want to work? How much income are you going to need in retirement? As well as, is any of this realistic with what you have saved, right? We're able to kind of run through all of those scenarios and kind of go through our process with you at the discovery meeting. And again, the discovery meeting is just really a get to know you, and you get to know our firm, an introduction really to get to know each other. And again, see if we're a good fit to move on to that second step, and see if we're a good fit to help transition you and your family into retirement.
Logan Sadler's number at Regary Financial is 888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. Doesn't matter if you live in Rancho Cucamonga, Banning, Beaumont, Temecula, wherever you are today. Thank you so much for taking a little time to listen to the show. It is certainly a valuable use of your time. 888-823-PLAN. This show is all about getting you to and through retirement. Nobody better than Logan Sadler and the folks at Regary Financial, who will take care of your financial needs, and it's a kind of a one-stop shop. I mean, they have connections with Medicare specialists even to help offer you well-rounded guidance in all things financial. And again, the number to call if you'd like to connect with Regary Financial is 888-823-PLAN. That is good for a discovery meeting, an opening conversation, a getting to know you situation with Logan Sadler, the same person you hear on the radio show. One more time, the number to make it happen with no cost and no obligation, 888-823-PLAN. Ron Setz here along with Logan Sadler. There's more on the other side of this timeout.
We talk a lot about creating a better 401k, but are we actually taking steps to do so? Maybe it's time to stop talking the talk and start walking the walk. By texting the word advice to 21,000, Logan Sadler can provide you with his 401k action steps, a guide that provides you with powerful information that could potentially save you thousands in taxes and fees and put you one step ahead when it comes to your retirement. So text the word advice to the number 21,000 today. For this special report, text the word advice to the number 21,000.
Did you know music is good for the heart? A study at a university in Italy showed that music helps promote a better cardiovascular system. But we also know that a sound financial plan is good for peace of mind. Keep listening to the Financial Beat so we can help you find a plan that both your head and your heart can agree on.
We are back now with more of the Financial Beat. Ron Stutz along with Logan Sadler. And Logan, we haven't talked about this yet today, but you have 876 YouTube videos out there for folks to see, and podcasts and everything. There are all kinds of ways to educate folks, and I know that's what you're all about. You want to get as much information out there in as many ways as you can. Tell us about those YouTube videos and also the podcasts.
Yeah, you can head over to YouTube and type in The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler. And like Ron said, it'll take you to a bunch of videos. I don't know if we have 800 yet, but we got quite a bit up there. And they're on a lot of different topics, and a lot of these are questions that people have written in and asked, or clients ask us in our first meeting. So I love to share some of these concepts with you, like what are target date funds? 401k versus a Roth 401k. 5 reasons that everyone should look at, different types of investments in retirement. A lot of these different things that come up, we like to make those short and educational videos for you. So if you're a video person, head over to YouTube and type in The Financial Beat. And again, we upload on there weekly. So click subscribe and you'll get a lot of our updates on content, as well as you can head over to podcasts, wherever it is you download podcast. It might be Apple Music, Amazon, Spotify, wherever it is. And you could type in The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler. And we have over 80 episodes recorded and put up there for you. And again, on lots of different retirement education to get out there for you guys and listen. So go over there, click subscribe, and listen to those at any time at your convenience.
Yeah, and you do a really good job on those, Logan, by the way. I will say that.
Thank you.
888-823-PLAN is your number to call, 888-823-PLAN, if you'd like a conversation with Logan Sadler. Got a quote of the week here. I love this quote. It's from Andy Rooney, the old curmudgeon who used to be on 60 Minutes every week. And he had some really fun and very good things to say. And one quote from him was, "It's paradoxical that the idea of living a long life appeals to everyone, but the idea of getting old doesn't appeal to anyone." He makes a lot of sense, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Everybody wants to, I think, death's one of the scariest things out there, right? So I think nobody wants to do that. So a lot of us want to live a long time. But like you said, nobody likes getting old, right? No one likes losing their hair or thinning hair, or nobody likes getting gray or wrinkly or their body aches, but we all want to live a long time. So that is funny. And again, us working primarily with retirees, most of our clients are typically in that retirement age or getting ready to start it. And it's interesting because a lot of them, I love asking them, what was their favorite ages, and all that type of stuff. So it's interesting on that quote, how it kind of lines in with what we do.
I always say, getting old is bad in some ways, but it's a whole lot better than the alternative. So,
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Hey, let's talk about false hope. Some people are clinging to certain ideas that give them a sense of false hope about their retirement. And if you would, Logan, explain the faulty thinking that makes us classify these thoughts as fool's gold. Number one on my list here, a lot of folks have the mindset that they'll be ready to retire once they hit a certain number in their savings. Yeah. For example, a lot of people say, hey, once I get to $1 million, I can retire. Yep. But that's not exactly true.
Not always. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I always say, Ron, that number is so... The dollar amount necessarily doesn't matter, like you're saying. I think a lot of it has to do with how much income do you need that thing to produce, right? Yeah. And what assets and what other types of tools do we have to get us there? Because like you said, Ron, let's use that $1 million, right? And let's use the good old rule of thumb. And again, this is not my advice. I'm not telling everybody to do this. This is just kind of the general of what's out there. When you look around, there's on average around, a 4% rule, they call it. Now, again, a lot of reports have came out the last few years which think it's less than 4%, some in the low 3s. Yeah. But let's use 4, for example. So if you got $1 million saved up, the rule of thumb is saying you could probably only take around 4% per year out of that if you were in kind of like a 60-40 bond to equity ratio. So 60% in the market, 40% in bonds. They're saying you could generate around $40,000 a year off that, and it should be enough to last, 10, 15, 20 years in retirement. Now, you think about that. $1 million generates $40,000 a year. Let's say you get, $30,000 or $40,000 a year from Social Security. So you're at $70,000 or $80,000 a year right there, right? That's about, and for most people, that's about all they have is Social Security and retirements, right? 401ks and things. So when you look at that, it's not normally, a lot of people are thinking, well, that $1 million is going to generate them $100,000 or $200,000 a year, right? So it's something where you really got to be kind of reasonable about, okay, what assets do I have? And again, I have some clients where they're able to take out a lot more than 4%. It's just depending on what investments we use and what solutions are out there. But it's just the bottom line of you don't need to know how much money you got to have, right? You want to know how much income you need, right? So if you need $100,000 a year, we got to know how much you got to get there. If you need $200,000 a year, we got to kind of know how to plan and what tools to use to get there, you know. And again, there's other ways to get higher payouts than like a 4%. There's some annuities and things like that, and other investments that might pay out a little bit more than that. But just kind of as a general rule of thumb, you really got to make sure you're working with a financial advisor that's really focusing on the income plan and how to get you to where your income is going to need to be, because the bottom line is what do most retirees want in retirement? They want income, right? That's what we want. We want a paycheck to help transition us into retirement and allow us to enjoy that retirement. So definitely making sure you're focusing on the right topic there is super important.
And those dependable income streams are so important because people are living longer these days. That's for sure. So
you're 100% right.
Got to do a lot of planning. Hey, a lot of folks have the belief that their income needs will drastically decrease once they retire. That's not necessarily true either.
No, it's not. It's not. You know, it's funny is I'm actually studying for another designation, and it's funny because on one of the test questions and one of the segments in there, they're talking about a lot of these studies, and it's really interesting because a lot of people, they're going to need a majority of their income in peak retirement years, right? So typically, let's say you retire at 65, which is about, give or take around the average. So 65 to 75, the odds show you're going to spend a lot of money, right? Yeah. You're going to be younger. You're going to want to travel. You're going to want to doing things with the grandkids. You're still going to be very active in retirement. Well, then it does show kind of maybe a decrease in spending on things you want to buy, right? You don't want to buy as much. You might have everything you kind of need. You might have taken all the trips you want to take type of thing. But one thing a lot of people forget about is health care and long-term care expenses. There's a huge chance that could really increase a spike in spending, especially in those later years. So many people plan for, well, I have X amount of money saved. I could just use the majority of it throughout those years, and then I'll be good from there. Well, the biggest thing is what happens if long-term care or something like that tends to happen down the road, which statistics show there's a good chance of it. What is going to be our game plan then, right? So I think it's so important to understand how your spending habits will look like and evolve over that period of time called retirement, and making sure your plan has those has that risk tolerance built into long-term care, spending maybe going up due to inflation in retirement. A lot of those things that some people don't necessarily calculate into the plan.
A lot of folks are laboring under a false hope that, they're assuming that they're going to get an inheritance at some point that is going to make up for any shortfall they have in their savings. And, a lot of us never get that opportunity.
No, you're right. There's a lot of people out there waiting for it, right? But not all of us are going to get it. And I even tell people, I've had family friends or whoever, and again, these people might not even be clients, and I'll just make a joke because it's true. I'll say, they're like, yeah, so-and-so's grandpa's rich, so, they'll be fine type of thing, right?
Yeah.
And I go, yeah, well, that could be the case. I go, but so-and-so might really like a charity, right? They might really like a church, right? Or they might not even have as much money as you think they have, right?
Yeah, that's
so
true.
It's something where you really can't count your ducks, right, till you got the ducks, right? So it's something where you really want to make sure you're not just heavily reliant on that. And again, some parents are very open with their kids. Some say, hey, you know what? Me and mom have, if we have a good retirement, it's going to go to you guys if something happens. You're going to get, a decent chunk of money. I have a lot of clients that are very aware of how that's going to look, but I have also a lot of clients that are just assuming mom and dad might have money, or be assuming that it's going to be theirs, because again, it's still mom and dad's money. So there's a lot of things that could happen, whether long-term care costs come up. They might want to gift a lot of it to charities and other things. So it's just something where you can't really count on that till it's there. And if it does come, then great. But you don't want to be super reliant on that making up your retirement.
Gosh, what you said just a moment ago is so important. There are a lot of people out there who assume that their parents are doing really well and they have a lot of assets, and they're going to pass them along. And then they find out after the parents pass away that they weren't nearly as well off as they thought, So that's
true.
A dangerous assumption to make. There are folks out there who have the notion that they're just going to figure out how to make it work in retirement because they can cut down on their spending if they have to. Even if they have to cut way down, they can do it. They can sacrifice and make it work.
Yeah, we've all said that to ourselves probably, right? On certain items out there. And one of the things I always tell people is, if it's so easy to cut spending and do that, why haven't we done it already, right?
Yeah.
Reason why is it's not fun and it's hard, right? And in retirement, yeah, you might be able to cut out certain expenses, but you're still going to have to spend money, right? You still have a utility cost. You still might have a mortgage. You might have, again, long-term care costs that might come up down the road. You still have all of these things that are still going to be very prevalent in retirement, considering, pretty equal to now, except for, you might not go out and eat a steak dinner every night. You can cut back on some of those things. But the assumption that you're just going to all of a sudden start spending less is pretty rare, since most people, you don't change spending habits, right? Especially it's very hard for people to change. If you're a spender, you'll probably be a spender in retirement, right? So it's something where you want to make sure that the financial plan is going to allow for that. And again, making sure you have a sustainable income plan is all of the more importance there.
You're listening to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, Regary Financial. And if you'd like to have a conversation with Logan, I'm going to tell you how coming up in just a couple of minutes here. But we're talking about people who have false hope. And there are people out there, Logan, who assume that the income estimate on their 401k statement is actually accurate. And that's not necessarily the case.
No, it's funny. I like how they put those on those statements, right? It is good for some people to kind of see. But I will say that they are sometimes extremely inaccurate, right? It's not even close sometimes. And I have some clients where they're not even aware on some of them. They're actually adding in Social Security.
Yeah.
So they're saying, if we did X, Y, and Z, you might get $5,000 a month, right? And clients go, man, that's not bad off a couple $100,000, right? And it's like, well, no. That's including your $3,000 a month from Social Security, right?
Wow.
So a lot of those aren't super correct, as well as I've seen some of them where they're assuming a return of 7 or 8 or 9% on some of those. And what do most people tend to do in retirement? They tend to invest more conservatively. Yeah. Not all the time, but a lot of the times. And so what does that mean? That means your returns are probably going to go down because you're going to be more conservative, right? So meaning that prediction would be way off if you're going to be closer to a 3 or 4% return rather than a 6, 7, or 8. So it's something where I really think that one of the biggest things that our firm has to offer as far as that goes is for a lot of you out there that are, maybe you're 50 years old, 55 years old, or maybe you're 65 years old, and you're kind of in that retirement go zone, we call it, where you're starting to get things kind of put together, looking at maybe you have a plan and you're looking to make tweaks to it, or you don't have a financial plan and you're looking to put all of those pieces together. What I mean by pieces is you got your estate planning, you got your 401ks, you got a pension, you got Social Security election, right? All these different things you got to kind of look at and start to game plan for how to utilize this in your retirement. We help put all those pieces together and really kind of help customize it to your needs and your goals, and really kind of walk through it and have somebody on your side, again, to put the pieces together, help implement, and to help transition you into retirement. So if you're one of those listeners out there, maybe you've been listening for a year, maybe you've been listening for a few days, right? And you're looking to get some further information, give us a call. Would love to have you come in and sit down for the discovery meeting and do an intro and get to know each other.
Hey, one of the great things about that discovery meeting is you get a chance to get to know Logan Sadler. Hey, pretty interesting guy, huh?
Thanks, Ron.
Maybe you've been listening to this show for a long time and just haven't gotten around to making that phone call. Well, here it is, the number 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. That number is for Regary Financial, and Logan Sadler will sit down and talk with you for, just a few minutes, maybe on the phone, maybe via Zoom, or maybe you might want to come into one of the offices, Redlands or Hemet. It's up to you, but it's not going to cost you a penny and not going to carry with it any obligation at all. In other words, no strings attached. So why not find out what Logan has to offer and find out if you like to work together? Some people are a really good fit, maybe not, and that's cool. You can walk away if you like. There's no obligation, as I mentioned, but the number to call to make that happen and to find out is 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. Don't procrastinate. Go ahead and call that number today, and then you don't have to rely on your memory, and sometimes the memory is not what it used to be. 888-823-PLAN. Ron Stutz here along with Logan Sadler, and if I can remember, we'll be right back in just a moment after this quick timeout.
As a small business owner, you have unique responsibilities and concerns when it comes to your finances. You might be solely responsible for managing your retirement savings while also running a business. Or it might seem daunting to separate yourself from a business that you built when it comes time to retire. Logan Sadler and the team at Regary Financial have assembled a guide that can help. This guide details the most common retirement mistakes that small business owners make and how to avoid them. To get this resource, text the word ADVICE to 21,000. Learn how to leave behind a thriving business while also achieving your retirement goals. Text the word ADVICE to 21,000. That's the word ADVICE to 21,000.
It seems like today there are so many places to get your music. With new streaming services popping up left and right, it can leave you wondering, where's the best place to start? It's a lot like financial planning. It seems like everyone has something to say when it comes to your plan. If you're looking for a financial advisor who's willing to listen to your needs and goals, then call Regari Financial. They take their fiduciary responsibilities seriously to help you make decisions that are in your best interest. So call today to start a conversation. 888-823-PLAN. That's 888-823-7526.
This is the Financial Beat.
Welcome back to more of the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, the show that's all about getting you to and through retirement. Logan Sadler has been doing this for quite a while now, and if you've been listening to the show for a while and just haven't gotten around to making that phone call, stop procrastinating. That is not your friend, procrastination. Go ahead and call that number right now and leave a message with your name and phone number. You'll get a call back from Regari Financial, and you'll set a time for a conversation with Logan. You get to know him, he gets to know you. It won't cost you anything. 888-823-PLAN, 888-823-PLAN. Logan Sadler, the same guy you're going to talk to, is the guy who does the radio show, the podcast, the YouTube channel. You see him there. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make it happen. We have some great questions in the mailbag. Get to those in just a second here, but I have a crime of the week, Logan. I always want to make sure that you don't run afoul of the law, so I'm worried about you and all our listeners out there as well. But
well, thank you.
There's some crazy crimes on the books, and do you realize it's a federal crime to transport a tiger between states unless you have a license?
No, I don't have any tigers, and I didn't really plan to, but now it's nice to know that I shouldn't be moving those back and forth.
Yeah. Did you transport that tiger across state lines? I guess that would be the.
I tell you what, I don't know if I'd want to. Right? No. I'd feel bad for whoever has to load them up.
I don't think so either. And man, that's far away from my reality realm. That's for sure.
Yeah,
so,
I'm with you.
Anyway, we wanted to make sure that our listeners don't end up in a sticky situation. So if you have a tiger and you're thinking about taking it to another state, you better darn well have a license before you do that. So. What kind of license? I'm not really sure. But
yeah, call your tiger professional.
Really? Yeah, you got it. Let's go to the mailbag here because we have some good questions. And the first one is from Jake in Marietta. Jake says, we've been thinking about turning our guest house into an Airbnb. Maybe we could bring in some extra income from it, but it would mainly be nice to have a way to create some business expenses for write-offs. Logan, any reason not to do this?
Well, yeah. So Jake's thinking like an entrepreneur here, which is always good, right? But you guys think through pros and cons. And like I always say, people are probably tired of hearing me say it. There are pros and cons with just about everything out there, right? And in this case is no different, Jake. So again, I appreciate the question. But so let's talk through this real quick. So basically, yeah, definitely from a business standpoint and extra cash flow, I've actually had a couple clients, not a lot, but a few clients do this and do it pretty successfully to where it's brought in good revenue, and the most important part of every business is didn't bring in that many headaches, right? That's the whole point of it. Now, the one thing I would say is, depending on your lifestyle and things like that, a lot of people think they're comfortable with owning, Airbnbs or rental properties and things like that. But they're not as not as comfortable as they might think once it starts, right? It's hard to think of. Unfortunately, people just aren't that great all the time with respecting other people's property, right? And so, you'll get into. I've had some clients get into some cases where they had some damages done or bad renters and things like that. I've had a few clients actually sell their Airbnbs because of issues. But again, I have a lot of clients that are doing just quite well with it. And they love it. So I would kind of sit down and really kind of look at what the pros and cons would be, how practical this is. Again, maybe it's farther away from your house. You don't want, random people sitting right next to you essentially. So just making sure from an operations standpoint, it'd be good. Again, the income's going to be there. A lot of those, since it's your guest home, you're not like you're paying a second mortgage for it or anything like that. It might be a good way to where you can actually generate some pretty decent revenue, but you want to make sure it's worth it when it comes to the overall, if there's going to be any headaches and operations standpoint from there.
All right, Jake, if you want to talk more about that, call the number for Regari Financial and set up a time to have a conversation with Logan, 888-823-PLAN. plan. Next question here is from Thomas in Palm Desert. And Thomas says, I just turned 65, but I plan to work for a few more years, so I have the option of staying on my company health insurance plan or switching to Medicare. Which is better?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Thomas, and I'll kind of pass this one off. But what I mean by that is what we kind of do, the nice part about our firm is, like Ron always says, we work with a lot of specialists. So part of coming on board with our firm is you're not only getting a financial advisor, but we also work with separate companies that all specialize in their own niches, right? So we do all the retirement planning, the investing, and the insurance side of things. And we also work with partners on the tax side, but also on the Medicare side. That can be a huge advantage where you can actually sit down with them and go through all the pros and cons. Again, I know a lot about Medicare and things like that, but I love passing things off to someone that's going to be a specialist in that area. And so what we would do, give us a call. We'd love to set you up, and we can set you up with one of our Medicare experts, and they can kind of walk you through all of the ins and outs and see which one's going to be the best fit for you, because that's what it comes down to. Number one, cost, but also coverage, right? We want to make sure we're getting the right coverage and things like that. So give us a call. I could have you come in and sit down with one of our Medicare experts that's just right across the hall.
All right. Well, hey, a lot of information can be gleaned just from having a conversation with Logan about just about any kind of financial situation. One more question today. It's from Beth in Yucaipa. Hope you're having a good day in Yucaipa, Beth. Beth says about a year ago, she had looked at moving some money into an annuity that would have protected her funds from loss, but she never actually did it. Now that the market has dropped so much in the last year, this move seems even more appealing to her, but is it too late to make that move now that she's already lost so much money?
Yeah, that's a great question, Beth. And you know, it's funny, Ron, we talk about this a lot where, annuities might have a bad rap, right? A lot of when the market's doing really well, very few people wanted to talk about save money, right? When the market's doing well, who needs save money? And it's funny, I've had quite a few people come in, and actually a couple of them are radio listeners, where they say, hey, Logan, tell me about an annuity, right? I know you're licensed to utilize those, so tell me what your thoughts are on it. I've heard you talk about it on the radio show. And it's funny because I've heard a lot of people asking about them now, probably more than I have in the last few years, just because when the markets are volatile, a lot of people are looking for safe money, just like you here, Beth, right? We're looking for somewhere safe to put money. Now, one of the things I always tell people is it's important to understand there's different types of annuities. That's why you don't hear me come on this radio show and say everybody out there needs to go buy an annuity, right? Because there's a lot of really good ones out there, and there's a lot of bad ones, and it just depends on what your situation is and what you're utilizing it for to see if that's a good fit. And again, can't necessarily recommend an annuity unless I know your whole situation, right? I got to know what types of assets you have, what the goal is for those, and really take a deeper dive there. But to answer your question, generally speaking on this, Beth, is annuities can be a great spot for safe money, as well as some of them could be good growth vehicles. Again, not meant to outperform the market by any means, but they could be a good rate of return, and as well as some of them can provide income, which I know is a huge topic. A lot of people out here listening to the radio show, when you're getting ready to go into retirement, like I always say, most people, they want income in retirement. So looking at those, they could be a great way to help do that. And again, they're one of the more popular ways to help create maybe like a pension for yourself, to where there might be some cash value left over if you pass away to go to the beneficiaries, unlike some more traditional pensions out there. As far as when should you move money into an annuity is very sometimes can be kind of a tricky thing there, right? Because a lot of people say, well, the market's down, you don't want to move anything into an annuity, which, yeah, could be the case in some cases. But also, well, how much more risk are you willing to take, right? If it went down, if your account's down 20%, well, it could go down another 20, right? It's happened before, not saying it's going to, but it could. Or it could rebound tomorrow and come back up, right? So it's one of those things where you got to kind of look at all the assets you have there, Beth. And I'd be, of course, happy to help walk you through this and kind of give you my side of things here on if it's a good time to move. A lot of it would depend on how much loss we're talking about, as well as what other assets, right? I'd always tell people you don't want to take, if you have $500,000 in your 401k and that's all you have, right? You don't have any other investment accounts and it's down. You don't want to take all 500 and move it into an annuity, right? Because that's not really like a solid financial plan. A lot of the times you might want to leave some liquidity, want some market money and stuff like that, but you might want to take a portion of that and move it in there. And then you could let the rest of your assets kind of sit there and maybe come back as the market comes back. But now you have a portion of your money safe and guaranteed like you kind of wanted, right? So I would have that conversation with you. And again, that's something we do all the time out there. And a lot of our discovery meetings, we answer a lot of questions like that. discovery meeting, Ron, we talk about it all the time, but the best part about it is it could be a Zoom meeting. Again, we have clients all over the place, not just in California, so we do a lot of Zooms. It could be a phone call or even in person where we can kind of get to know each other a little bit, take a deep dive, and again, dive into questions just like what Beth, Tom, and Jake had here, and be a little bit more specific knowing your situation. And again, we specialize in helping people get to and through retirement. We help retirees every single day, and that's what our specialty is. And so if you're one of those people out there looking into some of these questions and wanting to get an expert's advice, give us a call. I'd love to sit down and spend an hour with you and share some of the value we have.
888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. As Logan just said, not only does Regary Financial serve folks in Southern California, but all over the state, certainly, and all over the country, and in some cases, even folks who might not be in this country. They're everywhere. And Logan Sadler would love to talk to you via phone, Zoom, or maybe you're close enough you want to come into one of the offices, Hemet or Redlands. It's up to you, but make that phone call and get it established at a convenient time for you. 888-823-PLAN. It's not going to cost you a penny to get acquainted and to find out some answers to some questions that you have, and maybe get some answers to questions you didn't even know you needed to ask. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make that happen. A discovery meeting, no cost and no obligation. One more time, 888-823-PLAN. This is Ron Stutz along with Logan Sadler. And Logan, as always, it has been my pleasure to hang out with you for a while today.
Yeah, mine too. Always great spending an hour with you and talking about, I don't know about your favorite topics, but my favorite topics with retirement planning and education there. And I appreciate you being a part of it. And again, thank you to every listener out there, whether it's your first time or your 100th time, right? Great having you guys back. And we look forward to us being back again next week with another show.
Got to keep them separated.
Yeah, you got a better voice for that than I do.
Sometimes we talk about music on this show as well. So, that song's been running.
Everybody loves it.
It's been running in my brain ever since we talked about it at the beginning of the show today. So, sorry about that.
Well, they don't tune in for my financial education. They tune in for Ron Stutz's voice there.
No, I don't think so. Hey, have a great week, everybody. We'll see you on the next edition of the Financial Beat.
The information provided is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for anyone. All information discussed is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. The views presented today are those of BD Financial Group and do not necessarily represent the views of AlphaStar Capital Management, LLC. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult with your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Investment advisory and financial planning services are offered through AlphaStar Capital Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. AlphaStar and BD Financial Group are independent entities. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by the Commission, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability.